Good evening. You're watching the main news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Emily Sue.
And I'm Britton Clennett. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Gag order lifted after jury is selected for corruption trial of Rafael Hui and Kwok brothers.
Competition Commission seeks public feedback on legislation while dismissing business sector concerns.
Thailand's coup leader warns of crackdown on protests after getting King's blessing to restore order. Hong Kong's biggest corruption trial is set to move forward after 5 men and 4 women were picked as jurors today.
A High Court judge ordered the jury to keep a fresh, open mind during the multi-million-dollar bribery case involving former Chief Secretary Rafael Hui and property tycoon brothers Raymond and Thomas Kwok.
The judge also lifted a media gag order on proceedings, which means the public will get to hear full details of the trial in the coming weeks and months. Former Chief Secretary Rafael Hui was the first defendant to arrive at the High Court in Admiralty this morning. He was followed by Thomas Kwok and younger brother Raymond Kwok. The billionaire brothers who run Sun Hung Kai Properties, Hong Kong's largest developer, are the main defendants, along with Hui, in the city's biggest ever corruption case. Their trial opened on the 8th of this month and will last until October. But it was only today that the court picked the 9 people who will decide their fate. After a 2-hour selection process which began at around 11 a.m., Justice Andrew McRae chose 4 women and 5 men from the 150 prospective jurors. Before finalizing the list, McRae lifted the media gag on proceedings but instructed jurors to put media reports out of their mind from now on. He reminded jurors that whatever they have seen or heard so far is irrelevant to the decision they will ultimately make. He also told them to keep a fresh and open mind so they can make fair and impartial decisions based only on the evidence presented in court. McRae added that while he's confident the issues in this case are relatively straightforward, the evidence could be complex. The judge excused some potential jurors who were not confident about their English or had planned overseas trips, but he rejected concerns raised by others about a possible conflict of interest because they live in property built by Sun Hung Kai or work for the developer. McRae said their concerns will be valid only if they have an ongoing lawsuit with Sun Hung Kai. Hui, the government's former number 2 under then Chief Executive Donald Tsang, is accused of receiving $34 million in bribes and other financial inducements from the 2 Kwok brothers between 2000 and 2009 in exchange for favorable treatment. The trio, along with 2 other co-defendants, Sun Hung Kai Executive Director Thomas Chan and former Hong Kong Stock Exchange official Francis Kwan, have denied a total of 8 charges against them. Hui faces all 8 counts, 5 of which he shares with one of the Kwoks or both. These include conspiracy to offer advantage to a public servant, misconduct in public office, and furnishing false information. Hong Kong's competition watchdog has started consulting the public on how the new law will be interpreted when it's fully implemented next year.
The head of the Competition Commission assured the business sector it has nothing to fear. After years of debate and preparation, Hong Kong is finally moving ahead with its own competition law. The Competition Commission today launched a public consultation to gather feedback on the proposed legislation, which is expected to be introduced in the first half of 2015. Chairperson Anna Wu reassured everyone that a proper system will be in place to handle cases.
These will come to us in 2 different ways. One is people will probably start filing complaints. The other is we do have self-initiation power. We can initiate an investigation in areas that we feel needs tackling.
She has a simple explanation for those who may not be familiar with the new rules.
At the end of the day, what do we look at? We look at harm done, and that is harm done to your competitor by excluding them from the market. Harm in terms of precluding other competitors coming in. Harm in terms of consumers not getting enough choices or getting a variation of prices.
A range of anti-competitive practices will be targeted, including price fixing, bid rigging and manipulating market allocation. An important aspect of the law is the self-reporting mechanism, where offenders can turn themselves in exchange for leniency.
We'll be relying on whistleblowing and, as previously mentioned self-reporting by people who fear that they may have contravened the law will be an important part of our toolkit.
She played down fears of confusion and difficulties among the business sector.
We do need the law because it is only with the law that we can start measuring what is a breach and what is not. Really, you don't have to be scared about the law because if you do fair play, if it is a level playing field, if you do not disrupt the market, there's nothing to fear.
Guidelines to be released in September are being drafted to help businesses better understand the issue.
An important part of the message that we're starting with already is that we really want to encourage business to comply with the ordinance. It's in our interests as a commission for people to be compliant.
The consultation will last 4 months, but some homeowners already made their voices heard on day one. About a dozen people protested outside the Commission's headquarters in Wanchai this afternoon, calling for an end to bid rigging of renovation contracts at their residential estates. They left after handing a petition to Wu. The academic appointed by the government to study retirement protection plans for Hong Kong says his report will be delayed until July.
This comes as the Labour Minister seeks funding for the government's low-income family subsidy. Welfare Secretary Matthew Yeung announced on Friday that the minimum number of working hours needed to qualify for a full low-income family subsidy of $1,000 a month will be lowered by 16 hours, from 208 to 192 hours. Today, he went a step further and said paid holidays will be included in the number of working hours.
In fact, we've taken a pragmatic and compassionate approach, striking a balance between, on the one hand, trying to be caring and also take account of the realities of the situation. And also we've got to have regard to the likely impact on the labour market as well. If the work hours are too low, that may discourage employment as well.
Yeung said he aims to launch the scheme by October next year. First, he needs to get Finance Committee approval to employ more than 300 people to run the scheme and fund preparatory work. The subsidy applies to about 204,000 needy families who earn half of the median household income or less. At least one member must have a full-time job. Those working 144 to 192 hours will receive $600 per month and up to $800 more per child, depending on their working hours. Under the latest proposal, 122,000 families will be eligible for the full $1,000 allowance.
We're talking about a win-win recipe here. Promoting employment, promoting self-reliance, at the same time tackling intergenerational poverty by helping those families with children.
In a related development today, the Hong Kong University professor appointed by the government to study retirement protection plans for the city revealed that his report will be delayed. It was supposed to be released this month, but Nelson Chow said the report has been pushed back to July. He explained that it was a complex undertaking and had to take into account aspects such as the city's population, economic development, and inflation. He acknowledged that Hong Kong citizens do not have enough protection under the current MPF scheme, citing the examples of housewives, the disabled, and low-income earners. China is boasting that the growth of the internet on the mainland has allowed its citizens to enjoy extensive freedom of speech.
The controversial claim is listed in a new report from Beijing on China's improvements in human rights. Here's ATV's Winner Wong.
In a white paper released by the State Council Information Office today, Beijing details the progress it claims to have made in 2013. The paper declares China's progress in its human rights undertaking is there for everybody to see, and every unbiased and reasonable observer can draw a fair conclusion. Among its achievements, Beijing claims it has enhanced social fairness and justice, raised living standards, cracked down on corruption, and strengthened democracy. While rights groups and Western governments say the opposite is true, the white paper declares that the growth of the internet has dramatically expanded freedom of speech on the mainland. It goes on to note that Chinese netizens posted and forwarded 250 million microblog messages and more than 20 billion instant messages every day last year. The number of netizens in China hit 618 million at the end of 2013, and the internet coverage rate stood at nearly 46%. The claim stands in stark contrast to the crackdown last year and this year on what Beijing considers internet rumor mongering. Hundreds of bloggers have been detained and some jailed on charges of slander and provoking trouble. The white paper also reports progress in development and human rights protection in China's troubled regions such as Tibet and Xinjiang. But rights groups are alarmed about the latest crackdown on dissent in Xinjiang, where Muslim separatists from the Uyghur minority have been blamed for carrying out a string of terror attacks across the mainland. The most recent was the attack at a crowded market in Urumqi last week, when 5 suicide bombers killed 39 people and injured more than 90. According to official figures, police in the restive region shut down 23 terror and religious extremism groups and arrested more than 200 suspects this month. The official Xinhua news agency said many of them were in their 20s and 30s and used the internet to spread their jihad. The suspects were said to have learned how to make bombs by watching videos online and spread their ideology using internet chat tools and text messages. Winna Wong, ATV News.
Overseas, Thailand's coup leader has received the king's blessing as head of a military council which seized power from bickering politicians.
After securing the royal seal of approval today, the army chief warned that he will use force if there are fresh protests. ATV's Arthur Urquiola reports.
This is what Thailand's new military leaders do not want to see. Angry people protesting against a coup which ousted the country's civilian government last week. The military takeover was condemned by Thai citizens and many foreign governments, but the generals feel their action has been vindicated after winning the king's blessing. At a special ceremony in Bangkok today, Army Chief General Prayut Chan-o-cha formally secured the endorsement of the country's 86-year-old monarch. King Bhumibol Adulyadej, who's in poor health, was not present, but the wide respect he commands among his people ensures that his wishes will not be opposed. After being approved as head of a military council, Prayut faced the nation. The most important thing is to maintain peace in the country, he said. The army seized power after 6 months of sometimes violent street protests, aimed at ousting Prime Minister Yeung In the end, she was ordered to step down earlier this month after a court found her guilty of abuse of power. Prayut promised to hold elections as soon as possible, but did not give a time frame. But he warned that force will be used if there are fresh political protests. We will maintain firm control and deal with those who violate the law or protest and create a restive situation, he said. Since taking over, the generals have thrown out the constitution, dissolved the Senate, and censored the media. In addition, dozens of politicians, including Yeung, have been ordered not to leave the country. The former premier was released from detention today, but remains under military supervision. Protest organizer Suthep Thakksuban was also released from custody. The campaign against Yeung was aimed at ending the influence of her brother, former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who's been accused of running the country from exile. But with street protests paralyzing Bangkok and scaring tourists, the generals felt they had to step in. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
Still to come on ATV's main news tonight. Nico Rosberg wins Mercedes battle in Monaco Grand Prix.
CY Yeung shows off his Qigong moves at construction safety event.
Mr. Asia Craze, rocking the world. ATV Mr. Asia Contest 2014 is now open for online application. When it comes to weather, you know it's accuracy that matters. Weather report, tonight at 7:55. They can drive you nuts. From the most powerful roaring on Earth to the sexiest bodies you'll ever see. They're surely every man's dream. Drive it, tonight at 8.
我就唔覺得我係做善事。 我有碗粥咪同人分享咯，就係咁簡單咯。我哋可以做啊嘛，小人物咪小人物咯，小人物咪做小事啦。我可以㗎。呢個年代互助咧，呢個名詞咧，好似唔記得咗啦。有能力幫人嘅咧，就已經係上天賜咗我哋個福氣嘅。我哋愛香港啦，用個心去愛香港啦。
It's called a majestic tropical sanctuary. For ages, descendants have benefited from its richness. Discovering the allure, it takes faith and techniques. Heading to the destination, extraordinary views are all the way. Documentary World, The Great Summits, tonight at 9. Find out Britain's top antiques enthusiast. To be one step closer to becoming an antiques master. Contestants are eager to show their talents. Now, the competition starts. Antiques Master, Series 1, tonight at 10.
Lawmakers have attacked the government for allowing 2 ferry companies to raise fares on routes to outlying islands despite receiving a $190 million subsidy.
They accused officials of spoiling the operators and making them too reliant on government help. Yeung reports.
Transport panel lawmakers today denounced the authorities for allowing 2 ferry operators to raise fares on 6 outlying island routes when their licenses were renewed in February. They reflected the outrage of islanders when the fare rises were announced. Ferry fares at the moment are ridiculous, said the Civic Party's Kwok Ka-ki. He noted that it would cost almost $100 for a family of 3 to travel one way to the islands. Kwok demanded to know why New World First Ferry and Hong Kong and Kowloon Ferry were subsidized to the tune of $190 million when services and facilities did not seem to have improved. The government said higher operating expenses, including fuel and wages, as well as inflation, were considered when granting the subsidy. But legislators warned operators might become too reliant on government funding and reminded officials that they are private companies. The government can't pamper these operators, warned the New People's Party's Michael Tian. He suggested that the government should take over from the operators instead. Lawmakers pressed the government for a guarantee that the operators will not seek another fare hike, but officials did not oblige. Ferries are the only means of transport to the outlying islands, leaving residents there with no choice but to cough up the extra money whenever fares go up. The fare increase on the Mui Wa to Central route took effect on the 1st of April, while hikes on the other 5 will come into force on the 1st of July. Winna Wong, ATV News.
The Environment Minister has played down concerns about the stability of power supplies from the mainland.
The government is trying to convince the public about the benefits of increasing supplies from across the border. Arthur Urquiola reports.
LegCo's Economic Development Panel discussed concerns this morning about a government proposal to tackle the worsening air pollution by importing a third of the supply from the mainland grid. This is one of 2 options undergoing public consultation. The other is to triple the share of locally produced natural gas in the fuel mix to about 60%. Lawmakers expressed fears about the stability of imported supplies. Commercial sector lawmaker Jeffrey Lam, who has factories on the mainland, said the power supply there is far from satisfactory. During the summer months when power consumption is at its peak, supplies are sometimes suspended without notice, Lam pointed out. Christopher Chung of the Business and Professionals Alliance asked if there would be a mechanism to keep tariff hikes in check. Government officials explained that the mainland supplies power to big cities, as well as the countryside, and caters to all types of demands. As an example, they cited the case of Macau, which imports more than 90% of its power from the mainland grid, and has a reliable supply and a mechanism to stabilize prices. Environment Secretary Wong Kam-sing pointed out if Hong Kong were to pursue local power generation, there would be less room to open up the electricity market. He said if Hong Kong did consider purchasing power from the mainland, measures would be in place to ensure that quality and reliability meet current standards. But the environment chief stressed the government is open to both options being considered, and in future will consult the public on opening up the market. Environment Undersecretary Christine Low said in this case, a third competitor was most likely to come from the mainland. She explained that it's unlikely another company would build plants here from scratch, while there are already companies across the border investing in power generation. Arthur Rakiola, ATV News.
Overseas again, the man said to be Ukraine's new president has promised to end conflicts that has divided his country and open talks with Russia.
Preliminary results show that tycoon Petro Poroshenko won 56% of the vote, ruling out a runoff. It was a sweet victory for Petro Poroshenko, the billionaire known as the Chocolate King. His main rival, former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, conceded defeat after exit polls put her far behind in second place. That set the stage for the 48-year-old Poroshenko to take over the reins of a country torn between East and West. He pledged to reach out to pro-Russian activists who have in recent weeks seized government buildings in eastern Ukraine, triggering clashes which resulted in several casualties. Poroshenko promised an amnesty for those who took up arms in the east, which he'll visit as soon as he's head of state.
The only condition for using the amnesty law, two conditions. It's just no blood and disarmament. For those who are killing the people, they're terrorists. And no country in the world has any negotiation with a terrorist.
But there's little sympathy in eastern Ukraine for Poroshenko, who's seen as a flag bearer in Kiev for those wanting to push Ukraine into the Western camp. We don't have anything to do with the election of a president of another country, declared Vasily Nikitin, the self-declared Prime Minister of Luhansk. Luhansk and the neighbouring Donetsk region virtually ignored the Ukrainian presidential election, with ballot boxes there broken and stuffed with rubbish. The heavily Russian-speaking eastern regions held referendums earlier this month, distancing themselves from Kiev. In an attempt to assure eastern Ukraine, Poroshenko said he intends to talk to Moscow as soon as possible. Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised to recognise the result of the presidential election and has taken steps to ease tensions. He has already urged the eastern regions not to go ahead with their own referendums, but Poroshenko's demand that Crimea be returned to Ukraine may fall on deaf ears. Moscow incorporated Crimea into its territory in March after Crimeans voted overwhelmingly to join Russia. The ballot came after violent protests in Kiev forced Moscow ally President Viktor Yanukovych to flee, paving the way for pro-Western politicians to gain control.
Time now for sports with Raymond Yeung.
And another 1-2 for rampant Mercedes.
Well, that's right. This time they did it in Monaco. Germany's Nico Rosberg won the dramatic race and overtook teammate Lewis Hamilton in the overall table. The stage was set for a tense Monaco Grand Prix, with Mercedes teammates Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton feuding over the qualifying race. Hamilton accused the German racer of adopting tactics that denied him pole position. Rosberg showed no signs of remorse on the track as he surged into the lead, where he remained for the entire course of the Formula One Classic. Rosberg was first past the checkered flag, making it 6 wins out of 6 for Mercedes this season. The victory also saw the German leapfrogging Hamilton at the top of the overall championship race. The Briton finished in second place, with Red Bull's Daniel Ricciardo of Australia third.
Very, very special day for sure. Lewis drove really well and pushed me massively hard, so the pressure was on all the way. But you know, I kept it cool and then was able to win.
It was Rosberg's second victory this season. The 28-year-old also won the Australian Grand Prix in March. Also in sports, Adam Scott has cemented his new status as the world's top golfer with a win in Texas, while Hibernian's days as a top-flight Scottish football club are over. Hibernian and Hamilton Academical fought for the remaining spot in the Scottish Premier League. Hibs won the first leg 2-0, but Jason Scotland gave Hamilton some hope by scoring in the 13th minute.
Hamilton had the early goal!
Anthony Abreu scored 10 seconds from time levelled the score at 2-2, sending the match into extra time. When neither side found the net in the next 30 minutes, the contest came down to a penalty shootout. Hamilton goalkeeper Kevin Cuthbert saved 2 spot kicks to send his team back to top-flight football after a 3-year absence. But there was heartbreak for Hibernian, as they were relegated after 15 years in the Premiership. Ryan Hunter-Reay has become the first American to win the Indy 500 since 2006. After a crash-marred race in the U.S. state of Indianapolis, he finished a car length ahead of Brazil's Helio Castroneves. Adam Scott's status as golf's world #1 is safe for now, after he clinched the Crowne Plaza Invitational in Texas. The Australian, who knocked Tiger Woods off the top of the sports world rankings last week, beat American Jason Dubner on the 3rd playoff hole with this clean birdie putt, after both finished on 9 under 271.
Maybe added a little pressure to myself, trying to play like a #1. But I think the important thing was I realized that didn't mean playing perfect, and I certainly didn't play perfect all week this week, making a few errors, but it's the way you come back and get it done.
It was Scott's 11th PGA Tour victory. And a look at the weather before we go. The very hot weather warning was issued for the first time this year today. Temperatures range from 27.8 to 32 degrees, while the relative humidity was between 65 and 90%. Winds were moderate coming in from the southwest. Let's check on the ultraviolet reading. The maximum recorded for the day was 10. And tomorrow's UV index will be about 10 as well. Now for a look at the weather in the region. Showers associated with a weak trough of low pressure continue to affect inland Guangdong. And now the satellite images. It's mainly fine over parts of southern China. Here's what we can expect over the next few days. Still hot tomorrow, which will see a mix of clouds and sunny spells. Temperatures will range from 27 to 32 degrees. More bright and hot weather apart from a few showers in the next few days. And here are the latest pollution readings under the Air Quality Health Index. General stations are at 2 to 4, meaning the health risk is low to moderate. Roadside levels are at 3 to 4. Finally, here's the weather around the world.
That's our main news for Monday night. We'll have an update in 1 hour. I'm Emily Sue.
I'm Raymond Yeung.
And I'm Britton Clennett. We'll leave you now with the Chief Executive chilling out with some Qigong moves at a construction safety event today. Thanks for watching ATV. Good night.
Good night.
左腳開步，與肩同寬，曲膝下蹲，掌抱腹前，上托。 起身，後朝，右旋，搖頭擺尾，搖頭擺尾，魔運攀足，兩手攀足護神腰。 上舉， 岸，板川魔云。
Coming up, drive it.